They don't have all the prejudices and the culture of Western Europe, which used to be tied up to the Catholic Church. In fact, Christopher Dawson, professor at Harvard University, a brilliant Catholic English historian, said, and I deny it, the purpose of the Catholic Church is to preserve Western culture. Now, what would that mean to the 200 million yellow Catholics in Korea, China, and to the 250 million and more Negroid Catholics? They don't even know what we're talking about, unless they've studied a history course, and they have no interest in preserving Western culture. And by Western culture, I mean the continuity of the Sumerian, Egypto-Greco-Roman medieval culture, which every person, except some newly arrived Asians and a certain group of black people, have retained in a minimal way their continuity with their Negroid Weltanschauung, their outlook on life. So we're not out to preserve Western culture, you know, and in our attempt to do that, we've kept all kinds of medieval customs. So as people say today, the only monarch left with any power is not the Queen of England. She may be the richest person on earth, but she has very little power. The only person that has naked power that acts like a monarch left in the entire world, outside of dictators, and they're all not going to last that long, is the Pope himself. So that's the one big facet that Catholics have, and Protestants too. They suffer lots of the same errors, if not worse, some of them. They don't believe in egalitarianism. They don't. You have to study the Acts of the Apostles, the 7 little snippets from the book of Revelation to tell you about 7 different churches, lampstands they're called, and the first letter to the Corinthians, plus other letters that give you a vision into church life, how the first people after Jesus implemented the gospel. I don't know what kind of church we would have, as bad as ours is right now, if we didn't have those books as part of the inspired scriptures. Because they tell us how the people lived. And to stick with one of them, the Acts of the Apostles, they are the only real communists on this planet that could survive, which are a motto for the Catholic Church. We are communists. We are not atheistic communists, and not a government, ruthless government, trying to stamp out all previous cultures with all kinds of artificialities, but a communist government that we've experienced in the last 100 years. And remember, communism as a way of government only lasted 72 years. And it really did more harm than any czar before them. But why do we ever have Lenin and Stalin? And more importantly, from the thinking-based level, Marx and Engels and Feuerbach and Hegel and all those people. Well, because any jerk could figure out that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, and then we have the wealthy people, the blue bloods. So we don't have blue bloods anymore, but even the king of a small country can't afford the limousine that President Bush rides around in, and all the bodyguards and all that. So we just have a different form of royalty, which is against the founding fathers. And for Christians in the church, there's no hierarchy. Everybody is equal until we get that principle. And of course you can see why, as I said before, the bishops, even the holiest of them and the best of them, not only didn't do anything about Some of them it didn't even occur to them. That's the way things have been for centuries. But it's not only that they didn't follow the acts of the apostles and how everybody's needs must be taken care of. There must be no poor people. You must give away all you have to the community. Even if we can't reach that level, we have to be communistic, which is very important in the today's of decadent capitalism, unmanageable capitalism almost, and the amount of people on this planet starving to death, to give the most cruel example. The people still sold into slavery, either for housework, nannies, or the worst one, of course, is sexual slavery for young women and young boys. They even have cruises that advertise, if you really want a vacation, then you can go to Thailand and they'll get you all the boys and girls and stuff you want. It's sick. But in the church, it's unforgivable because, and it's not only in the Acts of the Apostles, people forget this too. If you look at the resurrection stories, and they're a special kind of literature, the last chapters of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and so-called John, and the added chapter 21 of John, when we're talking about the resurrection of Jesus, there's 3 points. One, the tomb was empty. Okay? Second, Jesus didn't walk around town with a goosed up body. We have the appearances of Jesus. Once Jesus raised from the dead, he's in a place we don't know anything about beyond the 100 million galaxies. He's in a transformed state that can appear, what we call theophanies, like the burning bush in Moses' time, or the dove descending from the sky and the clap of thunder and all that. And so in the resurrection stories, which is where the whole thing starts, you got to read the Gospels backwards. Yeah, the tomb was empty. They all insist on it. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Or better, the 4th Gospel. St. John did not write the 4th Gospel. The community of the beloved disciple wrote it. And then second, the appearances of Jesus. And what's the third thing? Who's going to run the church, as we began to call it? And that's where you have the Petrine privilege. Peter keeps saying, which has no direct connection with the resurrection, until we figured out it was the needs of the community. Jesus is risen. I believe that. He's appeared, not walked around town. He's appeared, transformed into a new state of existence person. And thirdly, how the church, you must go out and change and convert the whole world, and you need somebody to lead you. They got transliterated into bishops, priests, and deacons, but that won't wash anymore. The only thing we're absolutely sure is a special handing over of power to Peter. And that's called the Petrine trajectory. That's undeniable, and all mainline Protestants, with their knowledge of Scripture and our interrelationship, concede that today. Jesus did intend, by divine right, or whatever you want, to make Peter the leader. Did that make him the first bishop? No. When he got to Rome, and he was, of course, the leader of a community, who else could compete with that, with him? But he was not a bishop. But we make him the bishop of Rome. But there was no bishop of Rome because there were no bishops in the church. But there was, in the written scriptures of the church, the third part of the resurrection stories, which is, I'm appointing a leader that's going to keep you together, because that's the ultimate sign and the ultimate need of the church.